What's going on, guys? Welcome to the first episode of Property is a Game of Finance. I'm joined today by Arjun Paliwal from the Property Nerds and InvestorKit. How you going, man?
Man, I love the name. It's true. Property is a game of finance.
You know, I came up with it when I first got into broking. Like, that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to make the podcast name, get the logo done, but I just never got around to it. I think I was a little bit inexperienced back then, but I heard it on the Smart Property Investment Show years ago. Like, property is a game of finance, and it is true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's stage one where people don't see that. Like, it's all about the property. And then they realize they see a few mates or friends, families go beyond what's known as the wall of servicing or lending. They're like, how did that happen? How did this person have XYZ? And it's at that point that they realize, okay, it's a finance game.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Especially because some of those people that go direct to branch, they maybe get one or two properties, maybe three. That's when they go back to that same branch and be like, oh, what do you mean I can't borrow enough money? That's typically when a broker comes in with the non-bank lenders and the lender panel to seal the deal.
Well, you say branch, I say branch, right? This is the New Zealand in me coming out. So
you'd say dance, prance,
France,
branch, France, dance, chance. No, so I guess I wanted to do this podcast with you. We've been doing some work together for a few months. Everyone's happy with your services, man. I think you're one of the best out there. Can you tell us a little bit about how you started out? What got you involved with property?
Yeah, look, firstly, I can't take credit for you saying I'm one of the best in whatever we do. I've got a team behind us. I'm super grateful for that. So that's you are as good as your team is, right? So, but in terms of me starting the journey, like most, it started with an accidental purchase, like as an accidental investor. You're going in, you're trying to purchase a home in a community, an area you like, and then you realize what's really possible. And at that point, it's that moving from a home to an investor journey, and then you start thinking about growing a portfolio.
So when did you buy your first one?
When I was 22 years old, which was about, 9 years ago. I turned 30 soon, so
man,
be good.
So young.
8 years ago, I did my maths wrong.
So young, man.
No, it's been a real quick journey. Obviously, since that first purchase, we purchased that in 2015. Mm-hmm. So over the last 7 years, the portfolio's moved from that one purchase over to 12 or 13 properties. I'm very transparent with, the mix of things. Obviously, that first purchase was myself, my wife, my family, all coming together under one family home. Mm-hmm. So there's some support provided. There's myself, my support. There's obviously the support from my wife, who's pushed it really hard as well. So it's not a sole guy journey doing it on his own, smashing it out. Then the rest of the portfolio total now is upwards of 8 million, but 6 of that 8 million was through our own efforts and pushing that, growing that heavy, say 6.3, 6.4 of the 8 million. And then the last remaining part, unfortunately, had some family events occur. And as a result, there is some, components of inheritance and other things there. But I'm very transparent about that. I'm obviously grateful for support I've been given from other parts, but I'm also, want to show the work that we've done to build it, and that it is possible for many. They can build it. Yeah.
So it was Property Nerds first, then InvestorKit, right?
Other way around. So
really?
It was InvestorKit first, and that whole journey of helping others grow their portfolio, doing it ourselves, realizing that there's a proven strategy around building and scaling portfolios, as well as just the research of markets, knowing that there are things that tend to occur as a bit of a pattern before markets start to pick up. Yeah. A combination of really starting to put that picture together and seeing the proven results from years of helping clients. Then the Property Nerds came alive as part of, hey, there's a research behind this, there's data behind this, and this is why we get the results we get. It's the research that we put behind it. So
when you first started InvestorKit, then who kind of inspired you to, in those early stages, to get into that?
There was a few things, right, that came together to inspire me. It wasn't just that one person. I had used a buyer's agent before, so I'd realized what not to do because I didn't have the best of experiences when it came to the actual assets. And because of the soul searching of the assets that I'd first purchased from that buyer's agent that didn't perform as well, that soul searching led me to kind of go, wait, what does it actually take from a formula, a perspective of things that need to happen? for a market to do well. Because obviously after those earlier purchases, I made many other purchases that went really, really well for our portfolio, and I had applied a process, a methodology to it. Combining that, tertiary education, combining that with also the workplace I was in the bank, so that helped a lot with seeing successful case studies and the customers that had it rough, and also the fact that they had to give you all the information. Your curiosity was usually given with all the information rather than, oh no, we don't talk about that at the dining table kind of thing. So that helped me a lot in terms of getting all the information and realizing what not to do, what to do. Then I combined that with just seeing how much I was helping my friends, family, and talking through property investing with them. Then the idea for buyer's agency came alive from that.
Yeah. You're a weapon. I think that's well established. What do you do different to other buyer's agents? Because I think I have noticed between the buyer's agents that I'd use, there is a difference there. And please explain that.
I think, look, I highlighted the team to begin with. I definitely feel having a large team, like, we've got a team of 11 now at InvestorKit, and the power of that is that we can have a true amount of resources spread to truly support people. Like, we've got 2 team members who are constantly searching assets across the country. Actually now 3 in that space. One of them's searching realestatedomain.com.au daily. So even before a customer even thinks of going, it's a lunch break, it's after hours, I might jump out, see what's there. Yeah. We've searched the whole country. Yeah. Then we have others who are constantly hitting the phones, off markets, emails, pestering agents to go, hey, look, don't forget about us. I know the market's really hard and you might not need us, but we're here. We've got qualified buyers. We want to look for stuff. Yeah. Then we get off market access. Then you combine that with someone in our team who specializes as an internal researcher, seeing what trends are happening across the country, picking up every single infrastructure project across Australia, seeing what trends are shaping. Then you have people supporting servicing clients. You have myself overseeing quality, and you of course have our buyer's agency and associate buyer's agents team making sure presentations are being done. I think that's really important to distinguish, because when you've got the single operator, they might be a very genuine, hand-on-heart, lovely person who's got the right knowledge, got the right skills, the tool sets, but they're probably doing initial calls with clients, trying to call agents, getting back to clients, trying to research, trying to find. Then I ask myself the question, yes, I was once there too. So I'm not going to say that this world is completely separate. It's a pathway. But when you're in that space, are you truly offering your client a game-changing service level with that scale and an autonomous approach? So that's one thing. But if I think of our biggest point of difference, it's constantly investing in our research. We're spending upwards of 6 figures on our research. And that's not because, we want to just simply spend it for the sake of being cool. We actually want to generate clients' results. And so that means trying to figure out what's happening, why it's happening, backtesting, reviewing trends, patterns, the importance of economies, getting on the ground, getting people on the ground all across Australia. So I've just made that my number one mission, to essentially invest the most I can in our research so our clients get the best results. Yeah.
So you lean a lot more on the data than other buyers agents do?
Yeah, I think that's a big part.
No bias either.
Well, when you're licensed across most parts of the country, so we're not active in WA and NT, but the other parts of the country we're very active in. And so as a result, that means if someone calls up our team and goes, I'm really interested in buying in Brisbane, we don't have to go, yes, boss, Brisbane's great. We will definitely buy something in Brisbane. We can help you with that. That's the order taker buyer's agent. There's a world for them. Owner occupiers, you need support in a specific area, or a client who's an extremely savvy person from research, has the time, has the energy, feels confident about where their research is leading them, and wants to make a specialist-driven decision. But for us, we're thinking, well, if we say yes, we're doing you a disservice because we're just trying to do a quick deal. We need to take a step back and go, are you sure? Look at what's happening across the country. Here's what our data says. Brisbane's got some great opportunities here, but there are also these few cities, and this is what you could get for your budget here versus here. Are you comfortable to make that decision and say no to these other markets, or shall we explore them all? So yeah,
that's good, man. So I think obviously we've seen a really good stretch in the last couple of years for the market, but I've noticed myself that the sentiment is kind of changing. People are becoming a little bit more hesitant. And I think it comes a lot from the media. When people say, oh, the market's slowing down, they think of that as the Australian market altogether. But even when shit hits the fan and there's a correction, not all areas are going to see that correction. There's still going to be areas that are going to increase in value. And when you're relying on the data like yourself, I think that's the main point of difference. It's the unbiased data. Like, it's not just Sydney, Melbourne, close to capital cities. It's not just like that. So you are pretty active in regional areas, right?
Yeah. So I think I would say that our activity is in Australian cities. And I try and make that really clear to clients. Like, we don't believe in the notion of regional and capital. We only use these terms to be familiar with people, just so there's a connecting point. But whether you're investing in Sydney, it's important to recognize that I always use my personal example. This personal example could either just be showing that I'm a really boring guy, or it could be showing that there's some truth to this. I live in the suburb of Glenwood in Sydney. Maybe there's 5,000 to 10,000 people there off the top of my head. Maybe a little bit more, could be wrong. But in Glenwood in Sydney, it's the northwest of Sydney. I live there. I get my stuff from Woolies down the road. I go to an office in Bella Vista, 6 to 7 minutes away. Actually less, it's just the traffic times that goes
I love
up.
that. I love living that close to work. It's so good.
It's good, right? I go to Bella Vista for work. When I go for movies, food, dinner, restaurants, I'm in the northwest of Sydney or in the west of Sydney. When I hang out with friends, I'm in the northwest of Sydney. When I chill out, just want some exercise or other things, which I'm not doing as much as I should be, but in the northwest of Sydney. So what this means is that my whole life is centered around here. And I'm not talking post-COVID in this new world. I'm talking pre and post-COVID. So what the hell does Sydney even mean if I'm just featuring myself across Glenwood, Bella Vista, and a few others? And I promise you, I'm not the only one. Yes, there's a few people who make their trek and back, but that does not represent the majority. And so what people need to realize is that when you buy in Glenwood, live in Glenwood, operate yourself in the northwest area, you're essentially, the factors that force value ups and downs is not to do with the whole city. They're to do with what's happening in your local area. So if you take that mentality and go, well, I'm only impacted by maybe a couple 100,000 people, if not tens of thousands of people, not millions like we think Sydney has, then can't you take that same approach to other cities and go, well, there's no 20, 30-story buildings here of corporate towers and things are going crazy in Glenwood. There isn't a few suburbs up, but not there. So why does Toowoomba, Townsville, Bundaberg, Albury, Wagga Wagga, Hobart, Launceston, why do these cities have to have this sort of visual that everyone needs to be wearing a suit and tie to go to work? And that's what happens when you yourself buying in Sydney in that corridor has nothing to do with the whole city of Sydney. So I've taken that approach and thinking, well, I also come from a city called Wellington in New Zealand. The population's less than Parramatta, yet our house prices have grown more than any major Australian city. And the house prices have grown without needing all this, huge population. So I think from that perspective, I try and challenge that with clients as well, to look at things based on their relative supply and demand, not look at the size of a city, what they like about a city or don't like, because then why should they need us if they're so set on what they need to do?
Yeah. I think it's a lot around the price as well. They think because it's more expensive, it's more a premium asset, but really you're just after the percentage growth of what you're investing.
Yeah. I mean, you take a look at 10 years ago, and if someone who, was super snobby and was really about a certain area of Sydney and you had a couple 100,000 in the bank and said, look, I want to put my deposit together and I'm thinking I've got my budget, I could probably get something in Campbelltown 10 years ago. And they say, no, you should go looking, you should save up more, wait till you can get into Newtown, the inner west of Sydney. The food's good, the coffee's good, the dogs are cuter, everything's better in the inner west. And someone goes, okay, I need to get into blue chip, I need to wait, I need to go all the way until I can save some more. And as you're saving, the prices are getting away. Newtown didn't slow down, it kept going.
Yeah.
Then you look back 10 years, it's 2022, and you look back 10 years and you go, hold on a minute, Newtown and Campbelltown have grown just as much as each other. Newtown was 3 times more expensive than Campbelltown 10 years ago, and it's still 3 times more expensive today.
So just on that, because I remember I was texting you a couple of days ago about this very topic, and I had a thought. So Newtown wasn't always 3 times more expensive though, right? So
10 years ago it was.
Well, how do you get in before that point?
Well, see, the thing is, it's not about the before the point. It's about realizing that they both still grew phenomenally over 10 years. So should you be constantly waiting to be able to get into this upper echelon premium market, or should you do what your money can do for you at that given time? And that proves the concept that if your money had done some work in the area close to you that could achieve that budget that you could work on, and it still had the same drivers, you're better off investing than not. And that's where that Campbelltown example shows that you getting into it then, it's done just as much.
All right, I'll use this as an example, right? So you just say that there are suburbs side by side, right? Completely different suburb. You can have the exact same house, but one would be more expensive than the other. Now, there's reasons why that would be the case, but how could you identify that that's going to happen before it actually does, so you can get some of that uplift?
Yeah, good point. So I think the key to realize is that if you're operating in established suburbs, that gap has existed long before me and you were born. Like that gap was yonks ago, right? Newtown wasn't a suburb that came alive yesterday. They're houses that go back to 1900s, early 1900s, even 1800s, I think. So when you think of that, it was always an established suburb, and it was probably always a little bit more than somewhere else nearby. Yes, you can have changes that occur, but these changes that occur, what makes it really different or difficult is, are they changes that are occurring because new style of stock is being built? And then as a result, median prices are higher. Like I'll give you an example, Kellyville, Bella Vista, Box Hill, these areas. As stock was coming into these markets, because they were fairly farmlands back in the day and new types of areas were being built, when these new areas were being built, a reputation's being created as they're being built. So at the start, the first round of houses that came to some of these areas, they might not have been as different on their price points, because there wasn't a clear establishment of what this suburb represents. Then as time goes on, Schofields might have started to represent a common type of property that's just volume, basic, repeat house and land package. But then Kellyville might have started to see a few swimming pools come into the mix, some beautiful different finishes, different types of families. And then as this starts to expand, different types of people want to continue to live in these areas by those people. And this gap starts getting created, because this is what we call change. This is suburb formation. The problem with that, though, as an investor buyer's agent, there is no data unless you're so active to really know that change is happening.
That's why I was going to be my next question. How do you pick how can you see that coming?
So this is where you have to be super localized, super specialized, and that's hard. And you have to be really aware of dollar per square meter rates on new builds and seeing that. There's a reason why I don't advocate for that stuff. It's not because it can't grow. It's because you have to be so in it to know what's happening there to get that right momentum. And you need to know there's a lot of unknowns. What if 20 investors buy the next 22 lots? I don't know that's going to happen. But if it happens, guess what? You're going to have a lot of rental properties show up. Where's the owner occupiers going to come from who go, I want to build it like this, and I'm willing to pay the builder whatever, right? So as a result, there's so many unknowns I can't tell you. As a result, I don't act in that or play in that game, and we focus on established properties where we see local economy strengthen, trends come up, low housing supply, high housing demand, and prices start to swing.
That was in order from the first, second, and third movers that you've talked about in a couple podcasts ago. That was a really good one, man. I got a lot out of that. So might as well touch on it while we're on it. So the first mover is the economy in that area, right? So how do you look at those things? How do you...
So when we look at movers of property, it's a concept I've gone into, and what it is it's kind of like business as well. The first mover in business comes there, sets up a new industry. They want to, really showcase this new product or solution they're trying to do. And you might be too early, and people don't I think electric cars, right? They came out decades ago. Like they weren't new. They were out ages ago. But because they were in the wrong time, what was the downside of that? It never took off. So the first mover can come up with markets that can say, hey, this could happen in this property market. The economy's starting to show something here. Let's go there. You go there and you're twiddling your thumbs for 6 years, and the economy hasn't translated into changing housing trends. So the upside is you're there early. The downside is that you haven't seen it shift to trends. So in that upside, you're getting cheaper prices, better rental yields. In the downside, you're waiting longer opportunity cost, capital growth.
So I think long term, you're still going to be pretty okay. But if you are looking to get one and then get one soon after, relying on that capital growth, then you probably would move more towards a second mover, right?
Correct. The second mover is an area where you see an economy change and you see housing trends change. The beauty about housing trends is that every single time prices have been rising, the same trends occur. I can't bring up a time and say that housing prices have risen and these trends haven't moved. Those trends are increasing sales volumes, steady or lowering listings, decreasing days on market, decreasing vendor discounting, low vacancy rates, increasing rents, low building approvals. And long story short, what that shows is not enough properties for sale, lots are selling, more are selling faster, less discounting, rents are rising, not enough properties for rent. And so I can't remember a time where someone goes, dude, house prices are booming here and listings are going up like crazy. House prices are booming here and sales volumes are falling off a cliff.
Yeah.
House prices are booming here and days on market's going up like crazy. Never seen that occur.
Yeah.
So the power of a second mover is that you have an economy that's strengthened, but you also have trends occurring. Now, keep in mind, big asterisks here, trends can show you direction shifts, pressure building, but they can't tell you 1, 2, 5, 10, 15%. Like anyone saying, I know the percentage of growth rates. I wouldn't believe that. But what I can say is, hey, this has stronger trends than this area, so it could grow more. So that's kind of what the second mover is. It's relying on something to change on housing and an economy, and that's the upside. But the downside is you could have been there a bit earlier. You're now competing with a few more people because if trends are changing, guess what? People are changing too. There's competition. So.
Yeah. And all those data points you mentioned is what you track with Property Nerds, and Australia-wide, on a month-by-month basis?
We track it internally in InvestorKit.
Yeah.
The Property Nerds is now like our podcast that represents what we are, nerds for property.
Don't plug your podcast on my podcast, man.
It's the second best podcast after I think whatever you're going to do. Yours is the first one.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
Game of Finance.
Yeah. So, like I said before, the sentiment's changing, but what are you actually seeing in the data right now? Is it still looking pretty good? I know not all areas are the same, but I guess Australia-wide, and then you can get a little bit more direct as well.
So I think this is where the love-hate relationship comes up with data. Now, the love with data is that when you look at it across Australia and things are going good, you can paint a good picture for Australia, and that's what media does. But then also when you have two major markets, Sydney and Melbourne, where their month-on-month growth rates have become zilch now, or they're trending down. The problem that has is that these two countries represent almost 50% of the population in Australia. So when you have that now come up as a picture, it makes sense for mainstream media to comment on national data and consider these two cities as the most important because it is half their viewers, half their eyeballs. But the second thing is housing trends will be influenced by them. So as a result, those two cities will always make the national picture sound like it's slowing, sound like things are changing. I want to bring it back to 2018 and 19. 17, 18, the market's peak in Sydney, Melbourne, 5 years ago. Then going into 18, 19, 20, depending on which part of Sydney and Melbourne, we saw values decline by 5 to 15% on an annual basis.
That was one of my properties.
Right? Hey, look, me too, man. I was living in Sydney at the time. But the key thing here is that during that time, we had clients achieve double-digit capital growth across regional Tasmania, Ballarat, Bendigo, as some locations. I myself purchased in regional Tasmania during 2017 and have had my values double since. So the key here is that something somewhere is doing something else, and it's different. And that's what you've got to equip yourself with. How can I create a diverse portfolio so something somewhere in my portfolio is doing well every single year?
Yeah.
What we're in now is very rare. Like I can remember maybe 2000 to 2005, where the last time, from a data perspective, everything has been moving together in an upwards trajectory.
Why did that happen?
So I think right now what's happening here is that there's a huge amount of stimulus that's been thrown into the mix.
Yeah, what type though? Because it's not just first home buyers, right?
No,
What
it's
else?
all over,
Yeah.
right? I mean, the stimulus has been really broad. Like I'm talking business support, first home buyers, lower incomes, even middle incomes had an opportunity to grab something. That's one component. A booming infrastructure pipeline across many areas. Obviously, a huge focus on job creation. And also the fun thing is that many people don't realize is pre-COVID, we were due to have one anyway.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Supply conditions were tightening.
Yeah.
Rents were, rising. Vacancy rates were coming down. It's just that the explosion of that pent-up demand, combined with all the money thrown at it, combined with behavior changes that occurred post-COVID and what's happened as people think about their life, combined with all the household savings that people have kept. So there isn't this one thing of why it's happened. It's been a multitude of reasons that have come together.
So obviously you're pretty bullish on property as an investment class. I think that's pretty safe to say. I think people buy and they just think just because I'm buying, it's going to go up in value. They just make that assumption that you're going to buy, it's going to go up. No matter what it is, where it is, that's what's going to happen. But I don't think that's the case, right? And I think obviously being so bullish on property as an investment class, what do you see is the biggest threat to the long-term growth of property in this country? Yeah,
so I think I don't see a long-term threat to the country immediately. What I see is long-term threats to the individual, right? So certain individuals investing will invest without buffers in place. They'll invest without decisions around the asset type, apartment versus houses, new build versus older property. They'll invest across the country without doing the right due diligence checks that they should be doing. So I think more than the asset class itself or what the threat is to the asset class, it's personal decisions that will take stings on people. Relationships, divorces. These things are the threats to people's finances. So in my opinion, that's the first thing to call out. But what I would say from a broad base in terms of property, if I was to say 10, 15, 20-year horizon, right now, an area that I'm not a fan of is how much on that earlier stage buyer or the first time buyer gets thrown out in terms of ways to get them in. I'm not a fan of throwing out benefits after benefits after benefits to try and get that first home buyer into a market, thinking that this is how we save it. From grants, from low deposit loans to almost no deposit loans, to incentivizing them for newer stock, getting them to make decisions in areas where they're extremely far out or up in the skies. All these different things that occur are creating little risk components. Now, obviously, if we see prices grow, that risk gets alleviated. That's the whole nature behind these decisions. Hey, it's okay. It's a temporary risk, but as soon as a couple years go by, everyone's good. My thinking here is that because of political leadership in terms of what's in it for them, there's too much hype on the short-term stuff, and there isn't enough long-term visionary, city-changing, country-changing, creation of multiple major cities in Australia, creation of game-changing transport that the rest of the world commits to in their countries, committing to really reshaping even just our infrastructure within those respective cities, whether it be water-related, sewage-related, whatever it may be, that opens up an opportunity to create more cities outside of what we've been thinking. I just think there's so much potential in the number of cities we have. Like, we probably have one of the biggest density issues in the country. And when I density, I don't mean by how many people in one given city. I mean by how many people in our capitals versus our regionals. I think our 8 cities combined represent at least, don't quote me on it, at least 2/3 or 3/4 of our population. Then we've got another, 40 plus cities with maybe 30,000 plus population. That's just too much of a gap.
Yeah.
And I feel that's probably the big area of opportunity in Australia. And if we start just throwing too much funny money and constantly just focus on this short term, what makes me good come vote time, we're going to miss out the bigger picture from what Australia can truly become.
Yeah. No, good point, man. That kind of ties into my next question about housing affordability. Do you think housing is unaffordable?
Look, it's not cheap. I mean, in some of our cities for sure. But I think housing affordability to me has always been a little bit flawed as a concept. It's hard to gauge because, see, we're operating at that 65% renter-owner ratio. That's kind of been like that for many years. So it's not like Australia is this I love property country as much as people think. There's this image about Australia just being this I love property and everything's property. But there are countries all across the world that have a much greater weighting of renters to owner-occupiers. And if they have more renters than owner-occupiers, then there's obviously more investors. That's the whole, I want more property. I'm property hungry. I love property.
Yeah.
But Australia is sitting in a pretty healthy space of that sort of 65-35. So from that perspective, firstly, it's important to acknowledge that our home ownership rates are not crazy skewed to the investor. That's the first thing. The second thing to acknowledge is that the amount of cities that we have that have some relatively affordable median prices is huge. It's only when we look at a few of our major cities that this opinion gets skewed because they are that much more expensive. Like, Sydney and Melbourne are much more expensive. The next thing is we want affordability to get in, but once we're in, none of us want affordability. Like we all got retirement to think of. We all got, I want to be wealthy. I want to have a better gap in my loan to home. Yeah. I want to be able to sell, downsize, have a healthy nest egg. I want to invest more. I want to build a passive income. I don't know anyone who's in the game that goes, I wish properties were more affordable. It's usually I'm trying to get into it, but then once I'm in, I don't want that. So it's this argument to go, you only want it for why you want it.
Yeah.
But then once you're in, you don't want it. So that's another component. The other part here is people measure affordability on price, not on repayments.
Yeah.
And this constant focus on price when, that's not how you maintain a mortgage, that's how you get into a house. But once you maintain it, if it's cheaper now than it's ever been in many, many years, that's a big component to think of. It's actually not very expensive to maintain a home. It might be more expensive for sure to get into one. And the last piece is many people are basing their opinions on a 20% deposit commonly.
Yeah.
We need to get it out there to the country that you don't have to save 20% every time you want to buy a home. Is it the most amazing thing from a risk perspective? Totally. Like lower loan, good deposit, less repayments, no mortgage insurance. But if you're talking about truly getting into that ladder, there are 5% deposits, 10% deposits, and I too had many 10% deposits as part of buying my properties. Yeah. So housing affordability is hard. There's too many cities to look at. There's repayments versus income. There's perception of you want it to be affordable, then afterwards you don't. I definitely do think there are cities across the country that are very stretched.
Yeah.
But then I also think there are cities across the country that are wondering, wait, what do you mean housing affordability?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's just such a big topic, especially leading up to an election. It's just one side is completely just beating that drum so heavy, saying, housing's unaffordable. We got to do like public housing, just build heaps of homes. Like, do you think that's really going to help? What would you do?
I think
if you're Prime Minister.
Yeah, I think firstly, two things. Yes, we are weak here in Australia when it comes to our social, properties, when it comes to the government housing and things like that. Investors are funding everything, right? Most of the things when it comes to rental accommodation. There are other parts of the world where housing commission is not looked down upon. In many parts of Europe, it's like, hey, it's normal to have a house that the government pays for. You pay a great subsidies for, or some things like that.
Is there any side effects to that though?
Look, I haven't studied it deep enough to know what the downsides are.
Mate,
but
if you're going to run for Prime Minister, you better better study it.
I better realize it, right? No, but what I can say though is that what's that concept showing? It's showing that there's an opportunity to create far more homes that other countries in the world has done. And there's an opportunity to change the perception of it.
Yeah. And
there's an opportunity to have the government contribute a lot more towards it rather than having investors contribute the majority. So that's the first thing I mean to say. The second thing is don't ping investors for everything, meaning, hey, we'll throw land taxes at you. We'll throw higher mortgage rates at you. We'll throw higher council rates in some councils at you. We'll throw more taxes at you. We'll take away tax benefits from you. Hold on a minute. We're the ones funding the rental accommodation. Why do we constantly get, pinged with different things? You're not creating enough stock. So that's the second thing. If I was in that leadership role, I wouldn't make investing such a hard thing or make it so focused on pinging the investor because they're the bad ones. They're not buying the majority of the homes. There was moments in time, 2014, 15, 16, where investor loans represented 50% of transactions in some moments, but that's not a forever thing. It's a stage in that life. The final thing is coming back to the spread of Australian cities. Like, if everyone saw Orange for what it had to offer, Wagga Wagga, Tamworth, we're in Toowoomba and the mountains, the gardens and everything. Imagine if all of these cities not only had their beauty and their food, their produce, their lifestyle, but then they had a whole bunch of infrastructure, had a whole bunch of various jobs for different types of jobs to happen. We're commutable from city to city to see family, friends. Jobs were flexible. So I think if we can create more and more impact to our various cities, then naturally the pent-up pressure for affordability in one area or two areas starts to get spread a lot more. And then if you have 20 people at one home now versus 3 different cities, 6 to 7 people in each city fighting for something, that's naturally going to help, prices long-term in terms of their speed of growth.
Yeah. No, I like your thinking, man. You got my vote.
Look, I'm never going to go for it. I'm just telling you right now.
Nah, just joking, man. No, that's pretty much it, man. I really appreciate you coming on. I know I've been geeing you up to do this for months, but no, it's good to finally have you here because, man, I've been listening to you on podcasts for years. It's just so funny to have you on here just doing this for myself. It's great, man. No,
awesome. Look, I'm grateful to be on and glad that, I could hopefully add a bit of value from the different tips and things. At the end of the day, I think, property is going to be something that's going to be a part of, people's long-term wealth, growth and goals that they want to achieve. I'm not sitting here saying that every person should be, buying it instantly all the time, avoiding risk parameters. Those things are key because like coming back to it all, it's that personal factor that someone's going to have and how they can protect themselves to get through to the next level. But yeah, it's helped me and my family. It's helped many of our customers create generational wealth, start to create streams of income, help them grow wealth from one to the other. So yeah, it plays a key part.
Yeah, cool, man. No worries. Well, if you like this episode, feel free to like and subscribe. All Arjun's details will be in the show notes. All my details will be in there. But see you next time.